being recorded, so if you want to keep your camera on, it's up to yourself, or if you want to turn it off. But again, it's better if your camera's on because it can be a bit more interactive. If you get any questions, just put them in the chat box or raise your hand. If we don't see you raising your hand though, just put your question in the chat box and we'll get back to you. And we'll also aim to have a short break in between the session as well, so you can go away and have a wee refreshment and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's all. Obviously this is our last workshop as well, so after this we'll be moving on to the business idea competition, which we're really excited about. So yeah, move on, Alan.
No problem. So welcome to session 3. This session we're looking at business modelling. In session 1 we talked about how we generate ideas and how we filter out the ones that have got real potential. The potential usually relates to commercial potential, the opportunity to sell stuff. In the second session we built on that. We talked about how we can use the process that we presented to take these ideas and just put some meat on the bones. And now we're looking at how we take that idea and we turn it into something that we could actually take to a potential lender or a funder, or we could use in something like the business competition. So we talk a lot about business models, and what we're essentially talking about here is how the different elements of the business combine to form the structure of what will become the organisation that you'll use to sell your product or service. So when we talk about business modelling, it's really just the process of taking your idea and coming up with a framework that allows us to sell the product. Okay, so again, this will be some of our stream of consciousness as it always is. Just again, a reminder of the dates for the competition that Emma was talking about. Things really open in the 1st of March. And you've got plenty of time to get your application firmed up, particularly if we put in 1 or more support sessions for you. And I strongly advise you, it doesn't matter how fully formed your idea is or how strong your application is, that session is going to be full of tips and tricks from myself and other people who've got lots of experience of this type of thing, and not just in this competition, but in the real world. And we'll bring in some of the judges and they'll tell you straight out the sort of things that they're going to be looking for. So there's no excuse for not really understanding what the process involves and what you should be thinking about for a good application. And again, just to remind you, it's open for anybody, student, staff, or alumni, if they graduate in the last 2 years at any of the campuses. So we always start with a little bit of idiot's guide to what we're trying to cover here. We're just really going to introduce you to the business model process. We're going to talk a little bit about this tool called the Business Model Canvas. It's been around for a while, but you're likely to find it not just in academia, but also in industry. Lots of organisations are jumping on the Business Model Canvas bandwagon. And it's effectively just a one-page tool that allows you very quickly to, in this case, come up with a business model. But in terms of other applications, it could be that you're working on a project or you've just got an idea. For us, it could be we're working up a new model or a new module, and we might use the Business Model Canvas to help us put some meat in the bones. What you've got at the end of it, if you do it right, you'll have effectively a one-page business plan, which you can then apply to the application. And remember, the application for the Business Awards competition is aligned to the Business Model Canvas. It's asking you about the same stuff. And then what you should be doing throughout this, Gary's always a copious note taker. You should be taking the bits out of this presentation and the previous presentations and applying them to your own idea. And just to sort of clarify this, the business model in the real world is never finished. It's never complete. It's never satisfactory. You really need to be thinking of this process as a cycle, or in this case, it's a spiral. And once you get round the spiral, you should just be repeating the process again. And what we find is when you work with entrepreneurs, the successful ones are the ones who kind of do this learning, planning, tweaking, reshaping, starting again process, the cyclical process. They just do it because it's a reflection of who they are. They're never satisfied and they're constantly going through this process. So once you get to the end of the process, fine for the business awards application. But if you're doing it in the real world, you should be kind of doing this on an ongoing basis. I'm not saying you get this presentation out and you work through it every week or every month. What I'm saying is that you need to try and develop a mindset where you're never really satisfied with the business model and you're constantly looking to tweak it. And that's what you should be thinking about. So to get us started, I'm going to get Patrick to come in a minute. I presented this slide to Patrick yesterday. Patrick is a business development manager for the business school, and he's very, very experienced at working in businesses. And I'm not going to tell you what answers Patrick came up with, but we're going to talk to Patrick about what he thought in a minute. So what you've got in front of you is this, and this is from a big global research study. And what they've done here is they've gone out and spoke to people who kind of do the Dragon's Den type bit. So you've got venture capitalists and other funders and people who work for enterprise agencies and other organisations who are in the business of supporting businesses and investing in business. And what they're saying is that, according to them, these are the 10 most important things that they're looking for before they make the decision to give somebody money or not. So Dragon's Den, I think we all understand, is essentially, it's an entertainment program. But real people do go into Dragon's Den and they do get real money, and I've met some of them. But it's generally not why people go in. They usually go in because they've exhausted all their other opportunities for getting funding, or because they just want the exposure that they'll get from being on the program. It's usually one or the other. But even in Dragon's Den, these are also the 10 things that they're looking for. So I'm asking you not to rank them in order of importance. I'm asking you to identify what the top 3 are. Now, I might pick on a couple of you. I just happen to have Gary on my screen, so I'll probably ask Gary in a minute. But I want you all to have a think about this. I want you to take a minute to think about your answer. And I want you in the chat function just to put up what you think the top 3 are. Now, that might take you a minute or so to read, reflect, and then type. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just to sit and look at that. What they're saying is all of these things are important, but what are the 3 most important ones? And there are 3 answers in the next slides. And I'm interested to see, my view would be that we're probably as a group going to home in on at least 2 of the top 3. And we'll talk about, before we reveal it, I'll probably ask Patrick what his experience is and how he arrived at the conclusion that he did. So in the chat function, jump on, guys. You don't need to put them all together. You can put one, somebody else will put another one. But I want to start seeing a saturation of themes. Are we all in agreement? What do you value? What do you think other funders value? So start using the chat function. Let's see what you come up with. So I'll just give you a minute or so. Okay, so there's the first one, Christine. Christine, is your mic working, Christine? Are you able to speak?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Right, okay. So good business model. So have you encountered the idea of building a business model before? Have you used the business model canvas?
Yes, I have, to help other businesses
good.
kind of see where they're linear and where they could be circular. Right,
okay. So that's quite a sophisticated answer. So why, out of all the other things that we're saying are important, why did you home in and a good business model? Now, I'm not saying you're right or wrong, even though I know the answer. Why do you think it's so important?
I think it covers a lot of the things you've got on your list there about whether or not it's got growth potential and it's being set up. So if you've got a good business model, you've covered all your bases to make sure that your proposition is going to be as successful as it can be. And all the other things about being passionate and trustworthy and enthusiastic are all excellent, but they won't work in isolation from a good business model. So I see it as the basis that everything comes from.
That's really good. So that's also quite a sophisticated answer there. And I wouldn't disagree with any of that. I'm not saying it would be on my top 3. I'm saying that's a very, very good, credible answer to that. Now, you're not alone there. I'm just looking down. So guys, if you just go down the chat function, Shokan says the same thing. Katie, I don't know if your mic's working. Are you able to speak as well, Katie?
Yeah, I'm able to speak, yeah.
Okay, so you liked business model as well, but you also liked passionate and you liked growth potential. So why passionate? You've got lots of things on there. Why passionate? Why is that important to you?
I think passionate is important because then you know that they're kind of really committed to the business idea that they have. They're invested, they're going to put the amount of time and energy required into the business. And I think it's something that kind of keeps you motivated to continue over time when there's maybe bumps in the road.
Yeah, and that leads us into, we talk a lot in enterprise education about sort of skills that we should be developing, helping our students develop. And one of them is resilience, which is what you just vocalized there. What you're talking about, staying power, able to navigate the ups and the downs, because we know that you're going to take some hits. Some have an easier time of it than others, but not everybody. It's not plain sailing for everybody, and that's why there's a lot of support out there, and you need to be open to taking that. So that's a good answer too. But there's other things coming up here just now, so I'm looking at that. Gary, you sent that answer to me directly rather than to everybody. So just change the drop-down menu, send it to everybody. But you said, Gary, good business model, growth potential, and you've got this enthusiastic thing. Now, I think enthusiasm and passion, you could argue, we had this conversation with Will earlier on, you could argue that they're different things, you could argue that they're closely related. But Gary, why growth potential? Why is that on your list? Why is that one of your top three?
Because I think if you've got growth potential, then I think your business could strive in today's business sectors.
There's something about that. Are you also, and I'm not leading you, are you also thinking that perhaps that people are putting money into business, want the business to grow so they can get a better return on it?
Well, I think investment's a big thing. So if you invest on your company, then by all means, it definitely is going to grow.
Yeah. There's something about that. I think the thing that you see when you work with a lot of businesses, there's so many variables, you can't control all of them. You can't manage all of them. What you can try and do is try and keep as many plates spinning as you can. So, yeah. Will, I'm not sure if your mic is working. Will, are you able to answer as well?
Yes. Does that sound right?
Yeah, a bit loud. Maybe you want to turn the volume down. Will's got a battlefield voice like I have. Now, Will, we know you've worked. Will's one of my colleagues is lecturing enterprise here in the business school, and he's worked with a lot of businesses as well. So the point I'm making is, well, if it's a difference between giving money to somebody or not, how important is this growth potential one to you? Should it be would it be on your top three?
As an investor, though, you want growth because I guess with everything, it all depends, doesn't it? Because absolute growth doesn't mean anything because it's all about profitability or return on investment. So growth for growth's sake is a real issue. And you could look at someone like Amazon who pursued a total growth strategy and actually weren't profitable at all. Now, would you have put money into an Amazon? Well, a lot of people didn't because of that, because they weren't going to be profitable. All they did was target growth. Now, longer term, it looks like that's worked out, but that's unusual.
Yes.
So I would argue it all depends on what your risk appetite is and where you come from that. I guess if you flip it around and you ask a negative question, sometimes that allows you to understand the value of that question. Would you invest in a business that didn't have any growth potential?
That's a good one.
And
yeah.
So from that point of view, does that then change your mind about how you do that? Now, it's quite interesting because I guess if you do that to all of these, then you would say yes to all of these. But from an investor, what does an investor want? They want to put money in, get a positive return on investment over a certain amount of time and get their money back. So does it have to be growth? No, because you can either, basically it's two ways to make money in business. You either spend less money, so you cut your costs, or you sell more stuff. One of the two. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talk about that a lot. We're talking about that, I think, this next week, I think, in our enterprise creation module. The levers that you've got to have more money left over in your account is you can get your costs down, you can sell more stuff, and if you think you can put the price up a bit. But Will's right, you've not got a lot of levers there. Now, there's a whole group of people out there who can run perfectly profitable and perfectly successful businesses that don't want 100 shops. They just want to maintain the profitable status quo. So the aspiration for growth is important enough it's on the list. But as Will says quite rightly, it depends. Now, I'm always looking for a new phrase or a new mantra to add to the ones I've already got. And Will come up with a new one today. It depends is the answer to everything. And he's absolutely right. So in terms of that, it's not right or wrong. It's not true or false. It depends. In this case, though, the top 3 answers are a known answer. What did they say was more important than everything else? So I saw Lindsay sneak in 5 minutes late at the end. So Lindsay, is your mic working?
Yes, it is. Sorry, I'm getting building work done in my loft, so I'm still participating. That's how I had it on mute there, in case you could hear grills and things going.
You're cool, Lindsay. You're always a trooper. So Lindsay does effectively the same job as me, but she's on the career side. So where I'm looking, a lot of my focus is on helping students start businesses, but it's also about making them more employable. So Lindsay's also in that space as well. But you might have a different view, Lindsay. So coachable, what are you talking about? Why is coachable important?
I've mentioned coachable. This is from my experience running a mentorship programme, and I worked in the business innovation team previously. We had an enterprise mentoring programme. So I think if someone's seen potential in you, it's an idea that's got growth potential, but you're willing to be coached to kind of, I suppose, just kind of tailor it towards what your business is, and taking advice from experts and business advisors that know their stuff. I think it's really important. I've mentioned about growth potential as well. I think it has to have an opportunity to grow the business and make profit. So yeah, that was the kind of 3 main ones, but I think the coachable one's probably the top one for me.
Yeah, I wonder if other people agree. So if you look at the top, somebody getting an Amazon delivery, if you look at the top and work down, so we've got, I'm trying to work out, yeah. So Patrick, we know that you're a fairly black and white sort of guy. We know that. So Patrick, is your mic working?
Yep.
Right. So before we talk about this, right, I want somebody, I'm not trying to lead somebody to an answer, so I want you to be the arbiter here. So if you start at Christine's good business model and work down, so I'm going to read them out. Can you tell me, just a bit of a straw poll, from what I'm saying, what do you think the group feels the top 3? So we've got good business model, revenue, growth, enthusiastic, coachable, trustworthy, growth, good business model, coachable, growth potential, experience, passionate, business model, growth potential. What do you think in your gut are the top 3 from the group there if we're pulling our knowledge?
Well, they're going through the sort of having the good business model kind of stands out quite clearly from them, and a lot of people are focusing on growth, which is something that I didn't choose to do. And then there's that kind of, there's a kind of a mixed spread across some of the other stuff, whether it's being coachable, I think it's quite high up there. But some people have also then said, you know, about being passionate. I think to share with the group, Alan wasn't as kind as he's been to yourselves today. No. Alan showed me this slide when I was in the middle of doing something else and said to me, have a look at this slide. And then he started making the noise of a clock counting down, saying, pick the top 3. And he keeps doing it. You know, it's just his style of doing something to me. Pick the top 3. Pick the top 3. And I was looking at it and I was saying, okay, give me a bit more context about this, because this is what helped me then pick the top 3 that I chose. I was thinking more about, I don't particularly watch Dragon's Den, but I know what it is. But then I was kind of thinking to myself, well, hang on, somebody's going to invest in me. And that's which led me to the answers. What's the investor looking for? You know, so actually, do I get their attention? As some people have mentioned, it's about, you know, do they get a return on investment from them? And then looking at what would be the next thing, you know, how can we work together? So that's what kind of led me to my 3. But Alan would keep saying, is that your final answer? So I didn't get anything. So I get put in the spot as a business development manager to pick what I thought the top 3 were, with him badgering me on an invisible clock, which is, it's not an enjoyable thing until you actually get through the exercise. But
so what final answer did you come out? What 3 did you pick? What, in fairness, what I was trying to do there was get, Patrick's very experienced in this, so I wanted to get an instinctive answer from him. And this is, what 3 did you come up with, Patrick?
So I've been working in things like KTP, so knowledge transfer partnerships, where some of the experience that I could bring to the business was that the business wanted to expand, but it needed to get a loan, and things have changed. You know, it used to be the business could speak to the bank manager, and that model isn't there as it was. It's now the business must produce a plan, or they must put down in paper what they're looking for. They must start to show return. And that's what started me thinking along, well, what do banks look for? What do investors look for? Then thinking about Dragon's Den. So the way I started was looking at, you need to have a good business model. You know, what are you going to be doing? I then chose revenue potential over growth. because it was about actually, rather than expanding on growth, was about there is the opportunity for revenue, which then had me thinking the investor will be keen to see that because they'll get the return on investment over a period of time. And then I was looking at, well, what's it then down to? Well, these investors are highly skilled in business. They know what they're doing. If you're thinking about the people in Dragon's Den, if they're going to put that money in with you, then you're going to have a good working relationship, and you need to be, able to sort of work with others. So that's what led me to then saying I'd have then said it's the individual has to be coachable.
So your three was you had individuals coachable.
Yeah.
What were the other ones?
The good business model.
The good business, which is relevant to what we're talking about today.
And good revenue potential.
Right. So that was Patrick's, okay? And in terms of what we had, and again, I'm not leading you, Patrick, to this, in terms of what we had with the group, did you say business model?
I said business model is really high there, yes.
So I'm putting that in blue.
First. Yeah.
What was the other one you said? Was it growth?
Growth.
Growth potential, which is down the bottom. And what was the third one? You can.
I was kind of thinking coachable get mentioned a few times because I'm not looking at the chat just now. I'm just doing it from memory.
You think you said if there was a fourth one, it might have been enthusiasm. It looked if it'd been mentioned a few times. Is that what you said?
Well, in between being enthusiastic and being passionate.
Yeah, that's not one of the answers, but I'm giving it to the group because I'm saying I'm giving you every opportunity. Okay. Now I've not led anyone to an answer there, have I, Patrick? It's difficult to get a rise out of you at the best times. I've not led anyone to an answer, have I?
No.
Right. So it's all there. The group could change their answer if they want to, but again, they don't really know. They're just going with their gut. So what we're saying is, the group said the individual's enthusiastic. The company's got growth potential. It's got a good business model. It's coachable. Patrick said the company's got good revenue potential. It's coachable, or it's got a good business model. So just have that in mind, okay? So the actual answer is, and bear in mind, all 10 are important, but they're saying these three are the most important, is this. So Patrick was spot on, even with the ticking clock. Now, that doesn't surprise me because Patrick works with businesses a lot. When I first saw this, I think I got 2 out of 3, but I probably should have got 3 out of 3. Now, we started with first person to put up just a fire alarm, guys, in the background. The first person to put up a suggestion was Christine. So, Christine, we only saw one of yours, good business model. What were the other 2 you had?
I would have probably said the revenue potential, and then the other one, I'd probably go with coachable or trustworthy.
Do you work with a lot of businesses?
Yeah.
Yeah. So people who do this sort of stuff for a living, so Lindsay, Christine and Patrick, we're going to gravitate towards these 3 things. I would argue if you had to pick one, it's the coachable bit. We did this with Will earlier on, and that was the first one he zoomed in on. Loads and loads of support for business. I was talking about it with a couple of you yesterday. Loads of support in business, particularly in Scotland. The enterprise network is very well developed. They all work together quite well. But if you don't take that support, if you don't look for that support, if you don't ask for the help, you're not going to get it. So these things are really important. What it's highlighted is the importance of this one here, the business model, and that's the one we're going to look at just now. And that's what we want to see in the business award application. And remember, we're building on what we talked about in the last couple of sessions. And I think, Emma, you're going to be shortly, once we've topped and tailed this recording, I think you're going to push out all 3 recordings from the sessions, Emma, is that right?
Yeah, so we've currently got 2 of the last sessions on YouTube. I'll upload this one, but I'll put all 3 together and they'll be public so everybody can access them. So if you never went to the first or the second workshop, you'll be able to go into the sessions and see them as well. So yeah.
Great. So what we're saying is if you use these tools, approaches, practices, ideas, then you're going to come up with a much better outcome, not just for the business awards competition, but for whatever you're using it for in your personal, professional, academic life. Now, what we're going to do now is build a business model as a group. So again, the Will's idea that it depends is something you should have at the forefront of your mind. There's no right or wrong answer to this. It's not true or false. Everything's a discussion. So if you make a point, you've got to be expected to defend that point. But there's lots of different ways we could build this business model, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that in a minute. So this is the exercise that we used last week. And I know from speaking to some of you this week that some of you have taken this, you're actually starting to think about ideas around this space for not just your enterprise module that you're currently studying, but also for the business awards competition. That's great. That's the sort of thing that we're looking for. Remember, your idea can be anything, but it still has to be desirable, feasible, and viable, which we'll talk about again in a minute. So I'm continuing with this idea, but we're going to now build a business model that provides some degree of satisfaction to this problem. How do we encourage more people in Scotland to exercise more? Okay. Now, this, just to remind you again, were all the reasons why people don't exercise. And a lot of them are related to the sort of problems that if you've ran a gym, as I did, you'll understand instinctively why people say these things. So what I'm going to do here is pull all our expertise in the room. And after the break, we're going to build a business model for what the perfect gym might look like. Now, it needs to satisfy some or all of these things. It's unlikely that we could satisfy them all, but we do need to be aware of them. So you might even want to take a photo of that slide so you've got it in front of you in your phone, a separate device, because these are the problems that we're trying to address with our solution. The opportunity is to come up with a satisfying solution to these problems and make money from it. Even if you're a social enterprise, as we talked about before, you've got to be looking to make money because that's what you use to do the good work. So these are the sort of tried and tested excuses that we see all the time. Now, I'm just going to very, very quickly fly through these components, which this guy, Osterwalder, and his colleagues have come up with. And they say that these are the 9 components that you find in any business. Doesn't matter what it's doing, what sector it's in, how big or small it is, what its aspiration for growth is, what country it's in. What they're saying is every business model has these 9 key components. Now, Christine, we've established that you work with businesses. Do you use the business model canvas to do that work, do you?
Yes, we do. We use a template to go through these things, yeah.
Right, and there's lots of different versions of this out there, okay? So I'll show you the standard one, and I'll show you a slightly funkier one that I think you might want to think about using. So Christine, I'm not letting you off the hook just yet. So do you, like a lot of us do you start with the customer segments? This one here?
No, I tend to start with the value propositions first.
Good. Why is that?
I suppose it helps just to understand their business, to get a good grasp on what is their proposition and how do they add value, and then I kind of work from there.
And do you find they start off, they're not really sure what their value proposition or the unique selling proposition is? It's quite vague and it's pretty grounded. They actually talk about the things that they do, not the difference they're making to people's lives. Would you agree with that?
100%, yeah. You have to kind of eke it out of them, yeah.
Yeah, and this is where, when we talk about this, I'll talk about this in a minute, you need to be thinking here about why somebody would walk by somebody else's gym, in this case, to get to your gym. And here we want to try and be a bit more evangelical with things. So what I would argue is, if you're solving some of these problems, yeah, and if this is the actual space that we're operating in, then if you come up with a gym that gets more people to exercise, then you are in the business of saving lives. Do you agree with that, Christine, or am I being too evangelical? Is that a bit of a stretch?
No, I think that makes perfect sense, and it would to them as well when you frame it like that. And that's what we're always trying to do, is like put it back to them and make them see their value.
Yeah, and we've still got this "it depends" bit. Do you relate to that as well as I do if you work with a lot of businesses?
No, this is sort of newer to me. Yeah,
so the idea there is they're looking for us to coach them and give them the answer, but we're trying to draw the answer out of them. So it depends on your worldview. It depends what you're trying to achieve. It depends what your objectives are. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do. So what we're trying to do with this tool here is to bring order to the chaos, because startup businesses are really chaotic. I work with 1,000 businesses, as I said, all shapes, all sizes, when I was a business gateway advisor. It's always chaotic, and that's fine. So I'm going to fly through these guys to cover another couple of slides, set the scene, and then after the 10-minute break, we'll come back and we'll just fly through this, we'll build it. This is the process you should be applying for your own business ideas, and you should be applying this process for your business idea for the competition. So a lot of people like me start with customer segments, because the clients usually, the people, the individuals, you usually have a reasonable idea of who the customers might be. Now, I'm not going to ask you about that. That's just really asking you how you would break down the different customers who could walk through the door, in this case, of your gym. Now, what I'm going to do here is we're going to talk about the gym model after the break, but let's just use the idea of a coffee shop so that I can explore this. So I just want to see in the chat, guys, this is really grounded. If we had a coffee shop and we established that coffee shop and it was one block from Glasgow Central Station, one of the busiest stations in the UK, if not the busiest station in the UK, what would our customer segments be? Who are the type of people that come through the door? And I just want to see that in the chat function. The only reason it's worth segmenting people is so that we can understand what motivates them, so we can sell our product better to them. Nyan, what does that mean? We can, I think I know where you're going. We can divide the customer into what? Have you got a mic?
In like A to D, like means A means that customer frequently gonna come and it will be more profitable, and D means like rarely gonna come.
Right.
I heard that kind of in one of the business model about few months ago, I guess. So D means dumb or something, but A means like highly profitable or that kind of stuff.
So you're segmenting them on the basis of the frequency, the amount of times they come. Yeah, would you agree? Yeah. Now that's perfectly logical and it's fine. It's not normally what we see first, but it's absolutely fine. A lot of people would miss that because it's quite subtle. But what you're starting to see in the chat function are clues to why they come more regularly. So you're right, Nyan, we can look at them and see who are the ones that are going to get the loyalty cards. They're going to buy 6 coffees in a week and they're going to get a free one. And that's fine. They're quite useful to us. But we want to start looking. That's okay, Christine. See when you come back. Gary, unmute your mic. So you've got 2 in there. Business customers, what do you mean?
So the people that commute on their way to work,
that's different.
Business and stuff like that.
That's different. That's commuters. So that's a huge market. So if you were in a more rural area, the commuter side of things, unless you're near a train or bus station, it's not going to happen. But the commuters is a big one. So you've actually got 3 that you've given us just here. You've got, what do you mean by a business customer? Do you mean that they're commuting to business? Is that what you mean?
Is that me you're talking to? Yeah.
Aye, Gary, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so if there's commuters that are passing by that station, then if they're going to work, they're going shopping, that kind of thing. So obviously they're going to get the customer segments that way.
Yeah. So we know that they're commuters. So Gary, what type of service are these people looking for? I'm not going to pick them all, I'm just picking one. If they're a commuter, how do we define them? What type of service are they looking for? They need it to be what?
They're looking for quick, punctual. Yes. They're looking for that fast service.
They're also looking for it to be the same every time. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So not crap on a Monday, but good on a Tuesday. It needs to be the same all the time. Would you agree?
I do, yeah. And plus, if they're going to that coffee shop, they're looking for the same product to be served to them all the time. Because what I was going to say was that the customer expects the same product all the time. If they get different, or if they order something, don't get the same product, then they're going to take their business elsewhere.
That's a McDonald's model. So it's the same every time. It's designed to be that. And that's why we use the term McDonaldization, to mean it's replicatable. It's the same everywhere.
Yeah.
But Gary, would a vending machine not give them what they want?
I would tend to disagree, because sometimes they can run out of beans, sometimes it can run out of milk.
Brilliant.
They bring the same product that they're expecting from. And plus, the other thing that I take quite strongly at, if you're going to like a vending machine, you're not getting the barista quality. So if you go to a coffee shop and you're expecting a barista quality coffee, you're going to expect it to be made professionally. Whereas if you go to a coffee machine, you're just putting your money in and it's vending out machine. Where's what am I trying to say?
Where's the added value?
Yeah, And why are you paying for something out of a vending machine as to where you're paying for somebody that's been trained professionally to do the job better than...
That's good, Gary. There's something in that. See, the vending machine you still need to be able to trust that it'll give you what you want, which is the product, same as yesterday, and that I'll get my change back, and it'll actually give me a coffee. It's been restocked. It's got a cup. It's got a lid. In terms of that, So as soon as you start to have a bad experience around that, you'll go to the queue. That's very good, Gary. That's quite subtle stuff. It's really important. So even with something as simple as a vending machine model, where it's completely self-service, there's other things we need to think about. You've also, and that's what we're talking about, Shokan, if the vending machine's not working, you might give it a second chance, but you won't give it a third chance. Gary's point's quite a good one, but it takes us to Will's point of it depends. Some customers don't give a monkey's whether it's been served by a barista or not, but some people do. Some people just want a coffee. If you're rushing for your train, a vending machine coffee is much better than no coffee. And there's lots of other sectors we can apply that to. So if you look in the chat, guys, we've now we could fill that box in customer segments without ever seeing the business model canvas before, just with having a quick chat around this they're all absolutely credible customer segments: contractors, builders, shoppers, students, commuters. That's how you fill that sector. Okay. Then what I tend to do is jump over to the next one, which is customer relationships. So what sort of relationship do we need to have with the customer segments that we've just identified? Now, these two are obviously closely linked, but they're all linked. So what we want to be doing is thinking about what sort of relationship do we need to build with somebody who's using your vending machine. They need to be able to trust it. It needs to be replicable. It needs to be the same every time in the McDonald's style. So even a machine, you have a relationship with that, and the relationship based on trust. If you've got a boutique coffee shop, you're looking at something quite different. So Patrick, you like your lattes as much as I like my cappuccinos. If you go into a coffee shop in or around Central Station, what sort of thing are you expecting from them? You pride yourself that you're not really a people person, which I would argue with. What sort of relationship are you looking from the barista? Do you want them to know your first name?
No, I don't want them writing my name on the cup. I don't want faff. I want to get in. I want to get the consistent quality product in the quickest time possible, with as less interaction as I can, apart from a hello and a smile and a thanks for serving me. And I don't want to be oversold. I don't want somebody saying to me, do you now want a cake? Do you now want this special? As a customer, I've asked for something and I'm just looking for a professional service to give me what I've asked for.
So Shokan's jumping in with a couple of things. As you're saying that, he's saying the same thing, saturation of themes. So you don't want the faff of it. Now, Lindsay's starting to talk about the product itself. Now, any coffee shop will give you perfectly good coffee. It won't give you brilliant coffee because you won't get that in a big chain. So Costa, more coffee shops than everybody else in the UK. Starbucks, more coffee shops than everybody else on the planet, but not in the UK. So Patrick, you're not off the hook yet. What you just described, that's Costa, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'd also take that to the level of, for me, I would predominantly, I would drink espresso. And I want the hit of the coffee and I want it as quick as possible. And more recently, I've been drinking latte. Again, with that, I would then say I'm at the level of it's the taste of the beans. So really, I wouldn't use Cafe Nero unless it was the last option I had there of a barista coffee. I find their bean is for my particular taste, I find it to be quite strong and quite bitter.
Me too.
Which should then push me more towards Costa and Starbucks.
And
but
then I know Starbucks are going to write your name on it and go, Patrick, here's your coffee, Patrick, here's a coffee, and you're going to squirm, would you agree?
That's it, which then pushes me to Costa.
Totally. You're not bothered with the boutique coffee shop, the independent coffee shop, but it's nicer setting and leather couches and stuff. You're not interested in that?
That would only fall into if it's that sort of, if I was being a social commuter, if I'm going into, you've used the example of Glasgow, if I was into Glasgow for an afternoon or an evening or a social scene, and not when I'm just commuting.
So the product is the thing that you buy in the cup and the package and all the rest of it, but it's also things like the convenience of it, the staff service, which you might not want. Yes, we've got taste, but we've also got ambience. So you can go into Cafe Nero, one block. There's two of them, one either side of Glasgow Central, one block, away from Glasgow Central, and you'll probably get music, and it'll probably be classical, it'll be light jazz, it'll be elevator music. But if you go into Starbucks or Costa, there's probably no music at all. You might not care, but it depends on whether you care or not. So if you look at the chat function, guys, you're actually starting to get stuff where people are now doing what we do with the business model canvas. They're actually jumping about, and they're actually starting to talk about the activities, and they're actually starting to think about the value proposition. And that's how you do it. When we give you this canvas, Lindsay's just put in family friendly. That is part of your value proposition if you deem it to be important. So we were talking about customer relationships. Yes, it's family friendly, but it's also part of your value proposition, because Starbucks isn't family friendly. They're uncomfortable seats. You can't bring a pram if you've got one. You certainly can't bring a dog, which is part of your family. Quiet, music, whatever, you will naturally migrate to something that's a better value proposition for you, and you might not even know why you've done it until last. So look at the customer relationships bit in the chat, and you're starting to see all the things we'd expect to see, but we are not done. You then need to think about who all the key partners are, that if you don't have them, you can't operate. So it's a coffee shop within one block of Central Station. In the chat, I'm not even going to discuss it. Who are the key partners that you need to bring on board to establish and grow this coffee shop one block from Glasgow Central Station in Scotland? And just list them in there, guys. We all get this. We're all consumers. The reason we use coffee shops and things like it as a model, as an example, is because we've all used it. We all understand it. So in the chat function, it's not a trick question. Who are the key partners, the key stakeholders we need to get on board to make this business work? Who have you got? So I'll give you a second just to write there. Who should be in that box?
Alan, I know it's basic, but what do you mean for stakeholders and partners? So, like people that have money in the business, or
it could be. That's what we tend to think about as being stakeholders. It's, you know, they've got a stake in the business. They've got a stake in the gold mine, so they've got a share. So if the business does well, they'll do well. So we tend to think about investors, and they would definitely be in that list, Raphael. But look what's happened in the chat function. So we can't do it without suppliers. We don't grow our own coffee beans. We don't produce our own milk. So we need a whole range of suppliers to give us the raw materials for the product, and then we'll put them together and assemble our own product, and hopefully it'll be worth having. So Raphael, that's a good one. We are talking about investors, as Shokan said, but we need to get away from that and think a little bit wider. So a lot of you identifying suppliers, and now you're starting to break that down. Katie, yes, we might want to put more detail in there about coffee, dairy, the cakes, because usually we expect a food offering as well. The coffee bean, I would argue, is critical. If you've got a good product overall, but you don't like the coffee, like Patrick, you're going to vote with your feet, which is why he's more likely to walk by a Starbucks to get to a Costa. And universally, if there's a Starbucks there, you don't have to look far for a Costa. If there's a Costa there, usually there's another Costa really close, maybe 3 blocks away as well, particularly in a big city. Who else though? Is there anybody we're missing? We need to also be thinking here a little bit wider about things like not just suppliers, landlords. We've got funders. What about staff? What about our customers? And all sorts of other things that might help us hit the ground running with our business and perhaps make enough money to think about how we maybe open our next place as well. But we're not done. So that's the key partners. It's very, very straightforward. We'll look at the numbers in a minute. The location's important, Gary, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Your key resource, since you brought it up, one of your key resources is definitely your location, because it's critical to the business. In a business like this, there's going to be loads of competition, and that's okay. It shows you that that's where people go to get a coffee. What are the key resources that we need? And we might have talked about some of them already in the chat. What are the key resources that we need without which we cannot open? And you might have just talked about some of them. Yes, Patrick, start with employees. We could break that down as well to serving staff and management, and maybe senior management if you've got aspirations to set up a chain of coffee shops. So that type of thing. Raw materials, we've got there. Qualifications, Craig, that's good. Certification. We know you're an engineer, Craig. Is that your mindset? Do you always think about getting a bit of paper?
I think so. I just want to make sure that I'm getting a coffee that's just got coffee in it, and the person's been trained properly, I guess. Do you know what I mean?
Do you mean coffee mean it's not got hair and bogies and stuff?
Sort of that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like it's got the proper health and safety, it's hygienic, etc.
Now, when Craig throws that, and stay on, Craig, when Craig throws that in, okay, it leads me automatically to key activities. So dealing with legislation, these are verbs, guys, in here. These are actions or doing words. So Craig highlighted that. So normally when we get the gist of this, I'd be quite happy with a business model canvas template to jump about and say, okay, Craig, since you mentioned it, who's going to handle the legal stuff? You're a compliance guy. You're a quality guy. So are you going to deal with the paper? Aye, no bother. I'll deal with that. And that gives you credibility because Craig's got a lot more experience in that field than I have. Craig, in this coffee shop, if your staff get it wrong, could you kill someone?
Potentially, yes.
Could you kill a lot of people?
Yeah, I guess it depends. If somebody's done something
It depends.
wrong.
Go on.
I mean, I'm thinking along the line, was it Pret-a-Porter or something like that done with the nuts?
Yes.
Nuts and kind of things. So it could be one person, it could be 100. It depends what you've sold and what's been contaminated.
It's changed the way that food and drink businesses operate in the UK, not overnight, but within a very short space of time, around things like if you've not labelled your products well enough. Now, if you're buying stuff in from another supplier and you've not touched it, you've not taken it out and put it in a microwave, fair enough. But if you put it in a microwave and you've handled raw chicken and you make somebody or a lot of people seriously ill, you get real problems. So it's actually a thing, and it's a thing for most businesses, particularly if what you do is high risk anyway. So the key activities, and I know we're jumping about, are the things that you need to do to actually operate, and they're doing things, they're verbs. I need to open up, I need to close, I need to source and restock stock. As Craig says, I need to comply with the relevant legislation. There's always a bit of paper and there's always somebody in a white coat who can shut you down. There always is. You need to be aware of that. Ignorance is no excuse in the eye of the law, is the phrase that they always use. But there's also things like I need to handle cash, I need to recruit and develop staff, and there's all sorts of other things, to source new locations. So some of it's kind of operational, but some of it's strategic as well, if you've got aspirations to grow. So the key resources include staff and customers. The key activities include the things that you need to do to actually get the job done. We'll go over this a little bit more after the break, and we're on track, another 5 minutes, and then we'll break for 10 minutes. But we're not done. The channels, I'm just going to give you a wee tip here. Generally, when we talk about channels in business, we're usually talking about marketing channels, sales channels, or distribution channels. So when we talk about distribution channels, it's how we get the product to the customer. Now, back to Gary's point that the location is really important. Our location is 1 block from Central Station, which for a coffee shop, although we know it'll be expensive, seems to be quite a good location. Would you agree with that, Craig? That coffee shops, you'll find coffee shops around Central Station, a block or two away. It's a good location to have one apart from the competition.
Yeah, I think you could probably go around and look at where any coffee shops are, and a good business model would be, or party would be, to build one next to it if it's successful.
I always say that. That's really good. So the question I would say, stay on, Craig. Would you open up a sandwich shop next to Greg's?
Maybe no, personally, just because I think that they're quite profitable and people have unless you're trying to undercut such a big company, I think you're going to struggle unless you go for a niche type of thing.
Yeah, or give them, or maybe have a wider range, because their range is quite limited. Once you've had the 6 or 7 things that they have, you're kind of sick of it, aren't you? You go for a Subway.
Well, again, I mean, I'm thinking the one at Central Station, that tends to have quite a big queue. So if you're one of the people that realises you've got 20 or 30 minutes for your break, you don't want to spend 15 minutes in that queue, I might just spend the extra money and come into you if you're only 2 doors down. So there might be something.
Why do they never? I know they've got small units, and I know they're going down the metro model where you can sit in a little bit. It's not really a cafe, but some of them are. In terms of that, why don't they just put more staff on? If you do the maths and what you pay somebody an hourly rate at Greg's, and you look at the queue, and you stand and watch the amount of people who go away and just want something to eat. They wanted a Greg's, but they can't queue because they're not quick enough. Why don't you just put another member of staff on, or have a to-go counter?
Well, I think that's one of the mysteries up there with when you ask them if that's hot. Do you know what I'm talking about? And you get one of the pasties that sort of look warm. You're like, I don't know what your hot and cold is here. Do you know what I'm talking about?
There's a pasty tax, and there are implications for that. If you heat something up, you're adding value to it. There are implications of that. See from what you're saying there, just Craig. Well, that's a very, very good point. Just maybe explain that one to us. It seems crazy on the outset, but it's absolutely true, and I can give you numerous examples of it. What's the point you're making there, Will?
So one of the things that you look at is that often with a customer or consumer, they look at things called piss-off factors. Yes. And these are 3 things that stop you purchasing. So, for example, if you go to the supermarket and you have to find a £1 coin to put in a trolley, that's a piss-off factor. If you have to go in and the door sticks or jams in your face, that's a piss-off factor. You can't park, that's a piss-off factor. So then you'll go elsewhere. And what Starbucks looked at is one of the things was just literally crossing a road was enough to annoy people. So rather than worrying about that, they just put a coffee shop literally almost sometimes opposite corners of blocks. So they would gather it because they didn't piss people off by having to cross a road. So stuff that they couldn't control, which was well beyond it, they understood that by using multiple channels, even in the same location, they actually had different customer segments that they could meet.
Totally. And you see that very well around Central Station. On either side of it, you've got a Cafe Nero. Now, Cafe Nero is a big chain in the UK, but it's not the biggest. But they've got 2 of their units, one either side. And one's a slightly different offering. It's got more seats and they're more comfortable. But essentially, it's for the people who are going that way and they can't be asked going the other way. And that's what's happening. It's too much of a hassle for them to go down the other block. And ultimately, most people just want a good coffee. So they'll go to Starbucks or they'll go to Costa if it comes to it. Where it becomes interesting is where you've got 2 of the same chain within, in this case, 90 paces. And I'm talking about Starbucks. There's one in Buchanan Street and there's one 90 paces from it. One's a metro model where it's grab and go. There's no real encouragement for you to stay. And the other one has a wider food offering and there's more seats and they're more comfortable. It's actually a different offering. One will encourage you to stay. The other people who just want a coffee will migrate to the other one over time. And that's what happens. Will's point's a really good one. You need to understand it. So last 2 minutes, guys, just to crash through it. Revenue streams are all the different ways in which you can make money. So it includes things like the prices that you charge, and it also includes things like loyalty schemes and whether you have a subscription model, which you could. Somebody could just pay for as much coffee as they can consume, and they just pay a sum every month. We see it in other businesses or other sectors like that's the Cineworld model. You pay your monthly fee and you can see as many films as you want to, as you can possibly consume. And that's fine. So that's all the different ways you can make money. Cost structure are, and this is always the hardest bit, you need to speak to other people, look at other business models. Some of this information's freely available online, but you need to be critical and check that it's from credible sources, it's accurate and up to date. If you're going to base your business model on it, you need to come up with some basic figures about particularly the big stuff like how much is my rent, how much are my rates, which is a big thing in Scotland. What percentage of my total sales are going to go out on the staff? What percentage of my total sales is going to go out on the costs of making that? And things like marketing and all the rest of the good stuff that you have to pay for when you're running a business. Last one, guys, and the hardest, we'll talk about it a little bit more detail. The value proposition is essentially the way in which you sum up everything that we've talked about. And that's the reason, known or unknown, conscious or subconscious, for why I pass by one coffee shop and I go to Will's coffee shop. And it may be a combination of things, but if we're talking about a gym, that we're in the business of saving lives is quite a powerful value proposition, because I would argue Pure Gym and some of the other market leaders wouldn't have that as their value proposition. They want to do something quite different. We'll talk about that in a minute. So crash course, I know it's the stream of consciousness. We'll go over it in a little bit more detail in the last hour. Share the slides again, and we're going to put all this stuff, as always, into practice. Again, we should be thinking about the competition a little bit, but we should also be thinking about our enterprise modules that we're doing, and we should be thinking about any business ideas that we might have, we might want to do something with. So I'm moving on here. Now, this is the standard version of the business model canvas, and this is the most common one. So you see the 9 components that I just talked about, these ones here, and they're all spread out. Now, they've attached different amounts of gravity to different components, and we know that because some of the boxes are bigger. The best way to do this in the real world is you print this off and you make it as big as you can. So A0 is really, really good. So not A3, A0, make it as big as you can, fill a wall with it, and then you can actually put post-its on it, and then you can move the post-its around. And that's traditionally what you see, how you see people fill these things in. You have a chat about it, maybe start with customer segments because it's relatively straightforward. Write down your commuter one that Gary said, write down the shopper one Gary also said as well. And then you can also move them around if you think you've put them in the wrong box. Now, Gary, I've got you on my screen. I only get one when I'm screen sharing. Does that make sense to you how to actually do it?
Yes, totally.
Yeah, I know you guys are probably doing it in the class just now, but it's relatively straightforward. Now, I can make it sound dark art, mystical and magical, but it's not. So, Craig, I think you had your hand up. What was it? Were you want to ask something about this?
It was just something quickly. See, and I don't know if you know this, but do all the colleges have that paper size, the A0? Because I don't know where we would get that. I don't know how big that is, but
no, I mean, if you go and if you're doing it, it's quite good in groups, and it also there's something quite good from a group working point of view when you're huddled around a table, preferably a big table, socially distancing, obviously, doing it safely, and maybe you cut up some post-its because they stick, they're quite handy, and you can group things together, as we talked about last week. So if you're doing that sort of stuff, if you blow it up to A3, which your university one will do, so just I think you increase it by 140% it is. There's a function on all our photocopiers. Blow it up to A3, cut the post-its in half. And I'm not joking, it'll save you, you'll do it in half the time, you'll do it twice as good, much better than if you hadn't used it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So blow it up to A3 and cut down your post-its. It's worth doing. I mean, you feel a bit silly doing it for the first time, but once you start using it, you think, actually, this is saving me loads of time. And somebody try and be a bit ruthless and focused about it. You know, you do the De Bono's hats things where somebody is expected to always be negative. Someone's expected to always look on the bright side of things. And from that, you get lots more ideas and you can test those ideas a lot quicker. You probably want to appoint somebody who is the holder of the pen. Maybe probably you, Craig, and you write down the idea and it goes on the board. And even if you don't think it's a good idea, it goes on the board. Yeah. Yeah. And so A3 canvas, cut down your post-its, even cut them down. You only need a wee line on them. And then you stick them down and very quickly. You populate these with it. If you write it on the canvas, you can't move anything around. You can't cluster things or group things. You can't take them off at the end and make relationships between them. So it's quite an easy, simple, straightforward, quite intuitive way of doing it. So A3 is your friend. Just hit the A3 setting. This one's a bit funkier. I can't even remember where I drew this one, where this one came from, but I didn't come up with it. There are literally dozens of different canvases. There's also lots of versions of this particular canvas that are structured in different ways to show you the relationships and a focus on different aspects. This one, thanks for that, Emma. This one is focused on the three things we've been talking about in session 1 and 2, and we talk about all the time in an enterprise interventions. Feasibility, can we do it? Desirability, would anyone want it? And viability, can we actually make money from doing it? Okay, now I'm going to work through this example, guys. I'm going to spend about half an hour just building a business model canvas. We're not finished yet. It doesn't matter. You probably need, if you've got 4 to 6 people and somebody's gripping the pen, you probably need about an hour to take a business idea and populate a business model canvas. You could take longer, you could do it quicker, but if you take an hour, you'll probably have most of the fields filled and there'll be a fair bit of detail. One thing I would say, guys, all the time, I'm not be on the judging panel for the awards, just so I can stay impartial and so that I can front it. The judges will be a combination of our internal enterprise staff and external experts as well. Now, the point is, we always see, if we get a business model canvas, it's completely lacking in detail. So fill the fields, go down to a lot more detail, be as comprehensive as you can. Now, this is a really good example here. We're going to use this example of the gym, and the task that I want us to do, just to prove this process works, is think about what our ideal gym might look like. Now, we're not going to specify a location just now. I don't really care, but I'm giving you a location because location, as we've established, is important. So I live in a town about 5 miles from the centre of Glasgow called Bishopbriggs. And it's become a bit of a commuter town. It's essentially a suburb of Glasgow, but it's got about just under 25,000 residents. So it's a fair-sized town by Scottish standards. Not the biggest, but not the smallest. And it's essentially a suburb of Glasgow. So I live here where the big arrow is, just here. And within, it's about 4 or 5 miles of my home. It's probably a little bit less. There are perhaps more, but I'm aware there are 3 different gyms within say a 4-mile radius. So I could get to them in about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes in the car, depending on how good the traffic lights are. So I've got one that's very close, is definitely walking distance. One that I could walk to, but just going with William's point about the piss-off factor, there's a huge piss-off factor for me, because I would actually have to walk along the grass verge of a very busy bypass, and I'm not going to do that. So they're never going to get me for this one, because I can't get there. I could drive to it, but then it would have to be better than number 1. Now, Craig, I've got you on my screen here. Do you get the point that if I could walk for 5 minutes to this gym here and it was good enough, I'm not going to consider walking or driving to one that's further away? Would you get that? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, if there's nothing to incentivise you, then it makes sense. Good.
That's the value proposition. Stay on. So with the same rationale, I'm certainly not going to look at this guy over here, because it's going to take me at least 10 minutes to get there. So for me to ignore this guy and this guy here and go there, this one has to really have some real added value. Would you agree? Right. 3 different gyms with 3 fairly different business models using the same 9 components that we all just discussed for the coffee shop. Okay. So this is the one that we would walk to, and I'm sorry about the quality of the photos. Can you see that, Craig?
Yes.
Okay. Have you seen gyms like this before?
Yeah, plenty.
Right. Could you even recognise perhaps the brand? Is it maybe one of the brands that you might recognise?
I don't know. Usually the colour scheme gives it away, but I'm not sure who that is, that sort of turquoise.
Yeah, you see it in there. Showcan's just jumped in. This is Pure Gym. So they're definitely one of the market leaders in the UK. They may be the market leader. I've not Googled it. They may be the market leader, but how do you describe this business model, Craig? What are we seeing here? Is this indicative of the Pure Gym model?
What do you mean in line with what sort of...
How do we categorise this? So we walk in, what are we seeing here? What are they trying to do? Just what's the look and feel? Are they looking for really, really good service? Are they looking for a tailored service here?
No, I think they are looking to hit cheap and cheerful in a way, to be honest with you. I don't know if there's a better way of putting that, but...
No, it's a very good way of putting it. So how do you know how we... And again, in the chat function, this is great, guys. We're starting to get some good feedback here. Let's Craig off the hook a little bit. So, Lindsay, you're saying that they're looking for high volume. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think just...
How do we know that?
Just the way it's laid out, obviously there's quite a lot of running machines that are kind of lined up, so they're looking to attract large numbers.
Yes, and also behind this, you've got a whole row of spinners, and over to the right that you can't see from when the photo's taken, there's a whole load of cross trainers. So in terms of the CV stuff, they've probably got about, I don't know, 40 pieces of equipment. Now, don't get me wrong, in a busy evening, they're all full, but you don't have to wait long because they've got enough kit. The amount of kit they've got is the right amount of kit to cover the membership they've got. So Lindsay's absolutely right. Now, Lindsay, they've got classes and stuff like you talked about your gym membership and stuff last week. So in terms of that, they've got some classes and stuff. Is that okay? Is that part of the offering? Would that attract you into a Pure Gym, the classes? Do you like the idea there's loads of kit? We know it's not particularly a personal service. How are you feeling about the Pure Gym model?
I think if you want to attract large numbers, you can, as you can see in the picture, there's obviously quite a lot of people that attend the class. For me personally, I like smaller classes.
And you're not alone. Also, if we're looking at the gender split, women tell us they like smaller classes as well because they're very interested in the social bit for a variety of reasons. Yeah, they want to make friends and stuff. If you ask men, they might come up with something. They might come up with something different. Now, if you look at the stuff in the insight we're getting in the chat function, so Nyan, is it? We've got a Pure Gym in Wembley, London. Does it look like the one I just showed here? Is it the same sort of model? Maybe
it's exactly same.
Yeah,
same.
That's a McDonald's model. So is it maybe bigger than that one?
Yeah, that's bit bigger than the photo which is on the Scotland one. So
yeah, yeah.
So
I'm
outside,
sure,
like it's in London, it's kind of competition between these two brands, the Gym Group and Pure Gym. They both have almost similar. Everything is same. Even at some of the place, they have a same cost as well. So they just, and also it's like this side is Gym Group and this side is Pure Gym. So both are in the competition to grab as many as clients as they can. So,
and that's very hard if you're stay on that, and that's very hard if you're doing the high volume, low service model.
Yeah.
So if you've got the Gym Group who are huge, and they're not the only one, and you've got Pure Gym across the road from each other, and we're all offering pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
You only need a little bit of tweaking in your value proposition to come up with something that the customers quite like, that separates you from the other guy across the road doing kind of the same thing. So get this, Diane, right? And I'm not putting you on the spot here.
Yeah.
They've all got loads of kit. They all look kind of the same. It's all pretty much the same.
No,
kit.
actually, it's like the only difference I see is in the Gym Group Wembley, it's a stinky. If you go inside, you will feel like you will see sweats.
Yes.
You know, you see it stink. And in the Pure Gym Wembley, it's okay. Like you won't see that smell. So that's the only difference I have seen so far.
Well, in gym language, that's a sweaty gym or a not sweaty gym.
The Gym Group. The Gym Group. I'm not sure whether it's in the Scotland, but they do have over 25, 30, probably 60 gym all over UK. Yeah. It's probably bigger than Pure Gym, but like they massively developed.
Yeah, it's a big thing. Yeah. If you're doing kind of the same thing, and that's the only USP that you've got, we don't smell a sweat, that's not enough to pull people in. It might make some people come in, but it's not enough. So what you're seeing just now is this. Pure Gym is big and it's impersonal because it's a sausage factory. We understand that. Okay, they do it really well. However, you still get this. So what they're trying to do, and this is how they market themselves, these personal trainers, and this is a tried and tested model, generally speaking, in big chains, they work part-time, unpaid for the large chain. And then the rest of the time, they're then free to sell their own personal training services to the customers, which means they're kind of doing a bit of the hard sell. So they'll do the inductions unpaid for for Pure Gym or the Gym Group, and then they're free to offer their own personal training services to the customers. And that's not great. It's not necessarily a great model, but you do get this personal face, and it is a personal trainer, but you're doing it in Pure Gym, and there's probably 100 people watching you get trained one-to-one. So it doesn't really work well. Do you agree with that, Nayan?
Absolutely. Like, and in the Pure Gym, it's kind of more people like probably this gym trainer doesn't have the sufficient salaries, and they do motivate.
They've got self-employed people in doing the things like the gym inductions. It's a cost saving. They're good. They're trained. They're wearing their uniforms. But fundamentally, they're trying to upsell you. Now, Patrick said he hates that.
Forcefully upselling.
Yes. So like, that if they don't upsell, they don't make a living.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one model. So that's the one I was a member of. And now for me, I just want to go in and do a workout. I'm not looking for personal service. In the same way, I'm not looking for somebody to shout, Alan, there's your frothy cappuccino. I don't like it. So I just want to go in and do it. So for me, Pure Gym's great. We're not done. This is another one. Again, I'm sorry about the quality photos, but you can get what we're saying here. What they're actually doing is it's a smaller independent gym. It's the closer of the two, the two other ones. Now, we've not got anywhere near the same amount of machines. And they do look like the other machines. But what we've actually got is we see an awful lot more of this type stuff where there's people moving out in the car park. They're moving big tractor tires about, or they're hitting them with sledgehammers, or they're using these ropes. And it's a bit more of the sort of boot camp model. Now, Lindsay, I'm going to ask you again, have you seen that type of gym a lot, where it's smaller, it's more intimate, but it's less about the kit and more about how you exercise? And there's things like, there's more ropes, there's probably more bags. Have you seen that model, Lindsay?
Yeah, I've saw that at some of the boot camp.
But it's a boot camp model, there's no doubt about it. It's called Warrior Fitness. You know, they're putting that out there front and centre. We're not Pure Gym. Now, the point is you can make lots of mates there, and you might go in and a lot of these people we know, they're not particularly fit, but a couple of years in, they're doing a triathlon, and we see their stories on Facebook and stuff, or they're doing Tough Mudder, or they're going, they're doing a 10K run. So they're all about, there's more emphasis on personal development. Is that better for you, Lindsay?
Yeah, I think if it's kind of tying into your mental health and well-being, not just going in and doing a workout. And I think the fact that there's different activities as well. So doing like the mud run, and then there's things that you can do outdoor. Then there's a setting inside as well. And I think having a swimming pool and sauna, that's an added benefit for me.
Yeah.
I like to go for a swimming sauna after the gym. So that would attract me to a gym.
That you didn't know that, but that brings us on to example 3. Now, my point is, this is where you decide with your feet and your money whether or not the swimming pool and the sauna and usually a steam room are a deal breaker for you or not. Because in your gut, you're going to get all the things that you talked about, including your mental health stuff. You're going to get it here, but you're not going to get that at Pure Gym, okay? But are you going to get it at the next place? So this is option 3. And this is the council leisure centre gym. So there's the gym in the bottom right-hand corner. Now, they've got quite a lot of bits of kit. They've got a fair amount of free weights because council leisure centres are really busy. But the problem is they're really busy. So you're going to get a lot of people in. So there's going to be a lot of competition for it. But they've also got other stuff like a soft play. Unsurprisingly, they've got a coffee shop next to it. But they've also got a swimming pool, Lindsay. It's one of these big, gigantic council ones. It's probably full of kids and older people. But you can still swim if you want to. They've got lanes. But you've also got, in this case, you've also got a steam room and a sauna, and there's a wee hot spa. So have we got you, Lindsay? Which is it? Is it the Leisure Dome in Bishop Briggs, or is it Warrior Fitness? 1, 2, TikTok. Which is best for you?
I think Free Leisure Centre.
Why?
It's got all the facilities in the one place that I would use.
Convenience.
Yeah.
What about the making friends, social bit? The mental health thing's really good. That's a brilliant USP. You could build a business around that and potentially grow quite a good one around that. You just flipped straight away. As soon as I showed you the pool and everything in one place, you just binned that. Are we done? You don't want this anymore?
No.
Why not?
Because it's the swimming and the sauna and the steam room.
Right.
That's the added benefit for me.
So, and you know that instinctively, you automatically gravitate to example 3. Would you agree? Yeah.
Yeah.
What about all the bad stuff that comes with leisure clubs and leisure centres? Too many people, too many screaming kids. It's perhaps not cleaned as well as you would like. It's a thing. Are you all right with that?
It's flexible though, so if I go at a time where there's maybe not as many kids, because normally if I go to the time capture, I look to see when the kids' lessons are on, so I try and avoid that time.
Me too.
So it's flexible enough.
Yeah. So you're automatically taking the bits of the value proposition and you're saying, I'm example 3. Yeah, that's really good. Now, if you just look at the chat function, guys, before we move on to the next one, right? There's loads and loads of good stuff in there. Now, Katie, I think everybody's has to have a COVID solution because we're not sure if we're going to go back into lockdown or this is something we just have to live with. What's the point you're making there about the service? That could be the thing that separates you from the guy across the road. What is it you're talking about there?
So basically what I'm saying is that building in the option of having virtual classes into a regular gym membership or leisure centre membership, for example, means that, as noted before, maybe people that are hesitant to exercise because they feel like they're being judged or they don't like to be around people of the opposite gender, for example, can feel comfortable and get involved.
All this
stuff.
Also,
yeah. And also people who maybe enjoy the gym but don't have very much time one day, for example, can just do something short and sweet. So you're benefiting and getting a wider range of customers there. That's
really good. So what you're actually saying is, even though I want to do the physical bit, the face-to-face bit, if there's an added benefit of doing it online, if for that day I couldn't get out because I came back late from work, I can still have a workout.
Yeah.
That's really good. So we're always looking for, everything's about added value. And I would also argue that post-COVID, everything's about the experience as well. So you need to be thinking about what the customer experience is, okay? So we're on time, in the last 25 minutes or so, what I want to do is, and again, we're just going to use the techniques that we just showed you, and we still need to think about the idea generation techniques that we were using before. We just want to build our idea as a group of the perfect gym. Now, in order to do that, we need to go back to Will's point about, well, that depends and everything depends. So my idea of a perfect gym is going to be different from Gary's and Craig's and Lindsay's idea and Katie's. So the point is we have to set a few guidelines, okay? And the best way to do that is to start with the customer segments. Once we agree that as a group, it becomes dead easy. But before we do that, and we'll go with the majority, we're going to set up this gym in Glasgow. And I would argue that, we'll just go with the majority here. I would argue the main places you could put it are the city centre, which is quite big, the West End, the South Side, or you might feel there's another location where it should go, but the West End, South Side, and the city centre, I would argue these are the main three areas. So I'm just going to put that out there. If you come up with a fourth one, fair enough. But I want you all to tell me, you don't need to tell me why, I just want to get a saturation of themes. Where are we putting this gym? We've got one roll of the dice. We've got one chance at setting up a business that will create opportunities for us, our family and our friends, and maybe save lives in the process. One roll of the dice, we have to get it right. Where's the best location? Don't tell me why. Just let's come up with a location. West End, city centre. Keep going. I know we have to think about things like competition, and we have to think about things where our customers are going to be, and the piss-off factor that Will talked about so eloquently. But I don't really care. I'm not going to discuss everything. That's up to you guys. West End, 1, 2, 3. City centre, 1, 2. There's a lot of people there who haven't voted. West End. I want to see one or two more. Just here. So if I see one more, I'll let you off the hook. City centre. Right, that's clearly the West End, yeah? City centre, if we let that continue for a bit longer, might win. But at this point, it's the West End. So we're setting up a gym in the West End. There are some gyms in the West End. So we're going to start with our customers. Now, guys, forget what the gym's going to look like. You start with customer segments just because it's easy. If you want to start with something else like the value proposition, you can do that. It doesn't matter. I'm not the business model canvas police. But let's start with customer segments. Who might we find in the West End that might use a gym? Again, just use the chat. Students. Now, guys, I think I've said this before. I write like a serial killer because I'm left-handed and I'm a bit lazy at writing. So, students. So if you can read that, I'm writing my finger, so throw me a bone. What else have we got? Lindsay, give me one. You're on my screen. Give me one that isn't students. Give me another customer segment. Who's in the West End?
Business professionals are people that are quite well off.
Do you mean they live there?
On the area. It depends on the area of the West End, but people that maybe live in the West End, obviously there's certain areas in the West End that are pretty nice big houses. So
you can use the word
homeowners.
Posh? Are you going to use the word posh?
Yeah.
Okay, so they've got a bit of money. There are people who've got a bit of money, but there's also lots of students who don't want to spend money whether they've got it or not. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So we've got this tension. Now, I'm not saying that the West End's full of people with money. I'm saying there's a perception that some residents are affluent. And the research backs that up when you look at it. But we've also got students staying in big houses quite often, but there's lots of them in there. That's also something that we see. It's also a university area because the West End's dominated by the University of Glasgow. So the point is that can we have, and again, Craig, you've got a view on this, I think, can we credibly have a gym that has large numbers of residents and large numbers of students at the same time, Craig?
No, I don't think a lot of the students would actually use it if they've got Glasgow Uni, etc. there, because they're bound to have gyms in them. Which
they've got a whole building, Stevenson building, and always have, and it's very well resourced now.
Well, yeah, I mean, even UWS's is free, so I don't know how theirs works, but I would gamble that it's either free or pretty cheap.
Yeah, I learned to swim in the University of Glasgow swimming pool when I was a kid, and they've always had good resources, and they've got really good equipment. I was a bit tired at the time. It's really, really good equipment now, but That's a really, really good point. We might not target the students at all because they're well catered for. And free's a good price, Craig, is it not?
Yeah, I don't think you can knock it.
No, and in fairness to the principal, he was very, very clear. That was something he wanted to give back to students. The staff pay a bit, but I think rightly so in terms of that. So if you look at this, guys, right, there's the customer. So I'm not going to write them all down, right? Are we happy with that if we filled this in? Students, tourists, professional business people, retired people, absolutely. They're different. I think we do segment residents down further to retired people because retired people are looking for something different from a gym. Would you agree with that, Craig?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually thinking more that the West End isn't a good place. I'm actually thinking the South Side's better now. So.
No, you're done. It's going in the West End like a lump. But I would argue there's quite a lot of diversity in there. But yeah, there is something about now we start to look at it. You can change location, but in going through this process, we're starting to feel, wait a minute here. Where else would it? Where's better, Craig? What's a better location?
Well, I don't know. Do you think about it? To be honest with you, before you look at location, you're going to have to look at how much money it costs you to rent, blah blah blah. But again, if somebody said to you, look, it's going to have to be in the West End, then we would have to look at what is the demographic there. So again, if we had people that were quite well off, probably like Patrick and Lindsay, I'll just go with that. Right? Well, they might be the type of people that go, do you know what? I want that little bit extra. I'm willing to pay more to get that better service, to get that steam room, sauna, jacuzzi.
That's and I nearly put in a fourth example, but I couldn't. There wasn't one near me, which is the country club model. So it's either a hotel, spa type model, or it's the sort of Chris Lloyd one, where you're getting more. They might even have a tennis court. If they've got a swimming pool, it doesn't look like that. It's maybe a 10 by 15 metre or a bigger one, but it's not a council one, and it's not full of kids. But it might be full of families, but they'll all be like you. So we're starting to bring in things like affluence and class. And at some point, you're going to have to make a decision about who we're catering for. So guys, same again. I want you to choose one customer segment as your main customer segment for this West End gym, because then it becomes a lot easier. It doesn't mean we can't cater for all of them, but I want you to pick what's your main customer segment. And we wouldn't normally do this in this exercise, but it allows us to finish the canvas quite quickly. Who's our main demographic? Who's our main customer? Is it families? Is it retired? Is it residents? Is it students? Is it something else? Aye, I'm not surprised to see that. We might see other suggestions. Keep going. I want to see more saturation of theme. We don't get saturation of themes at 3. We want to see more residents, right? Now, in fairness, if you look at the customer segments, students will be resident in the area. People living in the area are the ones we're going to target, including all the other groups that we're about to talk about. Families will live in the area and retired people live in the area. So if the thing that links them all is they all reside in the West End, we're not catering for tourists, so we don't need to do anything different. We're not talking necessarily about people who work in the area and might be there, but they might not have a lot of time. We've got people who live in the area, it's local to them, they have time, and they could probably walk to it. Now it becomes quite easy to do the gym. Yeah. So with that in mind, the people in the right-hand column that have written, what relationship do we need to build with them? Just give me words that describe how they view us and how we need to interact with them. The relationship is based on what? What do they expect from us in terms of relationship? That brilliant. It's always trust in business, particularly when it's something like kids and gyms. Consistency is good. What do you mean by consistency, Katie? I think I know what you mean. What do you mean?
So like the same level of service every time you go to the gym.
Right, but it's a gym. Have you ever gone into a gym and maybe you're not seeing the same level? If maybe it needs to be cleaned and hasn't been, maybe there's no staff on, maybe you can't get in because somebody's not showing up for work. It's never 100%, is it, Katie?
No, but you can try and manage that as best as you can.
It's aspirational, right? So the trust needs to be there all the time, but it's aspirational. So things like, if you, as I did, if you ran leisure centres and gyms and you ask the customers what's most important to them, yes, they're talking about service, but they're also right high up on the list is it clean? Can I get on a machine? Can I do what I want to do? Is it consistent? And they talk about it all the time. They quite often talk about service, but when you drill down to it, they're actually talking about things like, are you reliable? Is it clean? Things like that. So the customer, you can put more in customer relationship, but that will do is just now. So in terms of this, what are the key activities that we need to think about? They're doing things, they're verbs that we need to think about for our business model if we're catering for the group that we've identified and they expect these things from us in the customer relationships. What do we need to be thinking about the day-to-day activities in the key activities box? What might be in there? Just give me a couple of examples in the chat. Yeah, well, I would say so. We're always looking for a verb, Lindsay. So we're looking for building relationships. Yeah. Now that's in gym parlance. That's we actually talk about retention and recruitment, or recruitment and retention. Yeah, I've zeroed the other ones because they're now in our head. So I'm just writing in the ones so I don't get distracted. It's going to fill up quite quickly. And I'm going to spill over. So we talk about recruitment and we talk about retention. Yeah. What do you mean interacting, Craig? Do you mean the serving the customers?
No, this is maybe just a personal thing, but in most of the gyms I've been in, they tend to find that a lot of the staff are consistently either talking to each other or floating about
on the phone,
constantly watching people doing exercises wrong. And that drives me nuts because I don't want to be that person that's coming up to a guy and saying, you're actually saying that you're going to injure you, because then they're looking at me and like, who are you to tell me? When I know that the staff there, I think, should be continually sort of looping the place and going, how are you finding this? There's a better way of doing this. And that makes you feel part of the gym, and you're learning as well. And they're making it a bit safer. So
well, see what you said just there. They are, and then you might become the evangelist. Remember we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. You don't want to deliver something that's ordinary. You want to deliver something where the customers go away and go, no, you definitely need to join this gym. And we know that's where we look for validation that we should go there instead of somewhere else. So if you look in the chat function now, Lindsay's now added a verb, Patrick's added a verb, Lindsay's added another one. That's what we're looking for in key activities. It's not knowledge of health and nutrition. It's building knowledge of, which is touching on what you're saying, Craig. Engaging an attentive staff, so engaging with customers. That's what the staff are doing, because we're filling in the canvas for you, the business owner, creating a sense of community. Now that, Lindsay, is leading to a value proposition just there. I'm creating a sense of community, and that is something that you won't get in some of the really, really big chains, because they're not trying to create a sense of community. They say they will, but that's not really what they're looking to do. They're looking to get bums on seats, manage it properly, and make as much money as they can. I'm not saying they're not looking to save lives. What I'm saying is it's not high up the list of priorities. So what you're starting to see in the chat function now are things that are starting to give us clues about what our value proposition might be. That's good, Lindsay. So that might be involved putting out surveys, listening to what customers want, understanding customer needs, sending out surveys. And that leads us nicely to things like your channels. Now, remember, we were talking about marketing channels, and we were also talking about distribution channels. And we might also talk about advertising channels, which I'd argue is different from marketing. Marketing is kind of the message and how you get it out there. Advertising is something quite different. I think you're broadcasting what you do effectively. So you really want to be in the realms of marketing. You don't really want to find yourself in the realms of direct traditional advertising. Distribution, for us, that's mainly positioning ourselves in a location where our customers are going to find us and be able to access to us. So we might get some students who, for whatever reason, don't want to use the university gym and they're resident in the area. So all of our customers, we've said, are resident in the area. So where are we going to position our gym specifically within the West End? Now, I know some people have got better knowledge of Glasgow than others, but I don't really care. And the chat function, tell me you would position it near something or on a particular street or beside something or across from something, Byers Road. Now, you're not the only person, probably Gary, is going to say that. Near transport, I would argue, Emma, that you've got an underground station at the end of Byers Road and you've got one in Byers Road at the other end of it. You've also got things like Kelvin Bridge, Kelvin Hall, Great Western Road. They're well serviced by underground stations, yeah. So anywhere around there, I think you've got good bus links. You can get a taxi if you wanted to, and you've got the underground, but they're probably walking near shopping areas or parks. So that's a lot of the West End just there. So we know we're on the right track if these are the sort of things that we're looking for. Let's assume it's roundabout Byers Road. Byers Road is one of the main shopping areas in Glasgow. It's the main shopping area in the West End. It's near the other two main shopping streets, Dumbarton Road, which is a little bit down market, and Great Western Road, which is a bit quirkier. And I would argue if you're a quirky gym, you might be closer to Great Western Road or slightly off Great Western Road. If you're boutiquey, you might be closer to Byers Road. If you're a little bit more down market, and there is a gym at the top of Dumbarton Road at the Byers Road end, and it is one of the chains, it's a chain model. So they obviously agree with you that that's maybe a good place to put it. So your main channel is going to be simply locating your business in a location where your customers are. And then you need to think about what you do physically, face-to-face, and what you do online. And you really need these days to be having a mixed strategy. You can't afford to be fully online at anything. You can't afford to be fully face-to-face at anything. Traditional advertising is very expensive, and we'll talk about that in our enterprise modules. When we talk about sales and marketing, I think it's week 7, we talk about what your return on investment might be for radio, micro TV, regional TV, flyering even, and then online campaigns, and then you decide whether or not you think that's a good choice for you. So we all get the channels, but does anyone get any questions about the channels, but what should go in there? We're really talking about, firstly, your location, even if it's online, and then we're talking about this marketing advertising approach, and we're also talking about whether it's online or face-to-face. There's no mystery to it. It's really, really straightforward. So everybody's cool with that, yeah? The key resources for a gym, we touched on it. We're talking about coffee shops. What should go in that box here? What are the key resources for a gym? Some of them are the same ones we talked about for a coffee shop. Just rattle them off in the chat. What should go in there? And you see how quickly people are jumping on now because we understand it. We've never seen the business model canvas, but because we've used examples and we've talked it through and we've picked models that we understand, coffee shops and gyms, it's quite easy to do it. But we've got equipment, what else should be in there? When we talk about gyms, we're preoccupied with the kit. What else should be in there? What else is key in that area? Aye, very good, Ket, I like that. So there might be a social area, it might even be a coffee shop in it, clean and well lit, cost. Now, if we're talking about key resources, it's not the cost, but it could be your pricing strategy. Yeah, I get that, Shokan. You probably want somewhere, vending machines, not just to get a coffee, but probably to get other things like energy drinks. If there's a pool, you could probably get a pair of goggles in there as well. Look at the stuff that's coming in now, though. This is a bit more subtle. This is good. Lindsay, why do we need a TV? What's that all about?
I'm just thinking because when I got the time capsule, there's wee screens where you can watch the TV whilst you're
While
running.
you're having a boring workout?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you go and get a cup of coffee somewhere else?
You can get a cup of coffee there as well as your cafe.
And is there a proper TV showing news or whatever on? Maybe you can read a paper or something. Is it
Yeah.
that type of model? Yeah. She said yes straight away. That's a little bit of added value. It's easy to do. There's a wee bit of a cost in it, but it's easy to do. You're encouraging people to stay. And that's back to what you were saying, Lindsay, the sense of community. You don't feel that you're in and you just have to go. In Pure Gym, where I was, there's a couple of vending machines, but there's nowhere you could sit. There's one table with a few chairs. You couldn't even sit and wait while somebody had a workout. And I think that's a mistake, because I think you're missing out on the fact very busy people. You might want a place to just sit. You know, you might not be feeling well. You might want to sit down. You might want to use the facilities. You might want to just come in and do a bit of social bit. Yeah. Location is really important. Remember, the location is not just physical, it's also online. You have to think about the place in terms of your online strategy as well. So loads of good stuff here as well, but we're not done, but we're nearly done. In terms of the key partners for your West End gym, yeah, bearing in mind there's quite a lot of competition around there. There's a country club model and there's one of the bigger chains, but it's not the biggest one I've seen. So we're looking at key partners now. Do you mean, Lindsay, reception staff? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, just a kind of welcome area when you're entering into the gym.
Right. So in your key partners bit, so if it's going in that book, that's why we use post-its. You might look at that and say, actually, that's not going in there. That's going in my value proposition, because it's a welcoming. I'm receiving people. I'm welcoming them. It's a welcoming environment. But the key partner might be the member of staff that's at reception. Or quite often you see the gym is in a building and they're not the only people in the building, and they've got a communal reception area. And if the guy at the desk's rubbish, you've got a problem. So remember, Gary, in the key partner bit, you're saying nutritionalists, are you? Gary, are you talking about people who'll advise you on specialist things like nutrition? Is that what you're talking about?
Healthy nutritionist, yeah. Sorry, it's just my keyboard. It was a bit funny there.
No, I just read it wrong. I've got a tiny wee bit of a lag, which was why I was talking over Emma earlier on. Right. But I'm working around it. So yes, key people who add value. That person there, because some gyms don't do it, is going to give you something to add to your value proposition. Not everything in your value proposition needs to be big. It can be lots of little things that make you walk across the road and pass somebody else doing kind of the same thing, but not as well as you're doing it. Who else in the key partners, guys? We've got the grounded, ordinary ones out the way. Local residents, local advertising. Who else? Staff, customers. Yeah, you might outsource some classes to people like yoga, yoga instructors. You might have a chiropractor who deals with sports injuries. That's better, Patrick. Why do we care about local schools and stuff? Are they going to use a gym, Patrick?
Well, I think it depends which type of gym you have. If we're still working on that model, and back to that, depends. But if it's got the kind of quiet places or the play areas, if it's got the swimming, so that back to saving lives and everything else and having a healthy life, teaching kids to swim. If you've got that, if most people are out working and don't use the gym, or if it's a lower usage with just retired people, there might be opportunity to sort of flex and maximise the quiet spaces, which might be during the working day or early morning, which might then go to local schools.
Yeah, that's good. Plus, we're sowing the seeds that exercise is a good thing as well. Plus, they're part of a wider family unit. And if they're doing the swimming lessons in there, they might get the parent in. If they're sitting with a coffee, you'll get a coffee out of them. They might join the gym because they're taking the kid for swimming lessons twice a week, as I did. I've been that guy. So that could work. That's a good one, Patrick. Emma, I totally agree with that, but you're the only person that suggested it. What do you mean? Why sponsors? What do you mean? How do they potentially add value to this?
I don't know. I'm thinking like sponsors who maybe advertise the gym or at events and stuff as well. Like say the gym was hosting an event, those sponsors that maybe fund it or contribute to it. A kind of partnership like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So there's lots of ways. I think it goes in the box. Whether it becomes a big thing or not, a big part of the business or not, whether it moves you forward or not, we'll see that in time. It definitely goes in the box. Loads and loads and loads of interest. You'd expect to do a bit of research around your idea around healthy eating. We talked about it last week. So you could get somebody who's interested in this type of thing and they might sponsor a program or something else, or they might advertise back to channels. They might advertise your service because you're solving a problem that they have in one of their channels. So absolutely, there's lots and lots and lots of different ways that you can make that work for it. It goes in the board, and it's back to that thing that we don't discard any ideas at all. The cost structure and the revenue streams, this is just money in. This is money out. It's always the hardest bit to do. You need a bit of a hand to do that. Have a go at get some numbers down on paper, and we'll help you make it better. Yeah, Lindsay, it is things like that. We tend to get obsessed with things like gym memberships. We could bring in visitors and maybe pay for a day pass. But it's also things like merchandise, which is never going to be the biggest part of the gym's income, but it is important. And then we've got the vending machine thing and all the rest of it. And there might be other ways that other gyms do. How do they get money out of us? And that's where we get inspiration. We'll look at their ideas and say, well, look, we're paying £30 a month there. Don't really feel I'm getting good value for money. So you either think about dropping the price, which I would argue against, or you charge the same amount of money and you get more in this value proposition box. I would argue you never undercut, never charge less than what everybody else is charging, because that's the price. just give them more stuff. Speak to them, find out, as Lindsay said, find out what they want, just give them more stuff. Make the experience better, create a sense of community, give them more of the value proposition, give them more time. It's easy to give people more time if you can manage it. And guys, that's all I wanted to cover. The value proposition bit is really a lot of little things, or if you're lucky, you've got this big thing about we're in the business of saving lives. Aspire to come up with something that's big and evangelical, but you'll not get it. You know, it's only matters that you try and think a little bit bigger. We're not cheaper. That's not a value proposition. A value proposition is we are the best value for money. The best value for money is never the cheapest. Give me any example where the cheapest in any sector was the best value for money, and I'll argue it stone cold. And please don't say airline flights, because I think we've all proved as a society the best value for money in airline flights is never the cheapest. Yeah, pay a bit more, you get a lot more service in terms of that. So guys, that's a crash course in business modelling. No, it's a stream of consciousness. Hopefully the 3 workshops together kind of make sense. Emma said earlier on she's going to edit them down this one down a little bit. She did the other 2, and she's going to push them out, and you'll be able to access them again. Don't worry too much about whether you like you're seeing yourself on screen or not. It's not about that. We're more interested in the learning and how we apply that to our personal, professional and academic lives. So yeah, again, guys, thanks for taking part. We're going to now shift emphasis going forward, starting next week, onto the business awards and raising awareness around that. We're not selling anything. There is quite a big prize pot. We've tried to make it as simple for you as possible. We're going to put lots more support in to help you come up with a good application for hopefully what's a good idea, and we'll talk it through with you. We've kind of started that already, but we're not going to start the application process until the 1st of March. If you've got any questions, as always, though, direct them to me rather than Emma. Emma's the response for a lot of student innovation stuff. She wears a lot more hats than I do. So if it's a question around business support, please direct it to me. I've got a little bit more capacity around that as well. If we need to go to Emma for an answer, then we'll do that quite happily. Any questions at the end? I'm just going to hand over to Emma in a minute. Any questions at the end, if you want to just wait on, I'll be the last person to leave, or you can always email me or just ask it in the chat. Okay, so thanks again, everybody, for taking part. Emma, I think you want to say a few words, did you?
Yeah, no, just again, thanks for coming. As I've mentioned, I'll send over a link to this session once it's uploaded on YouTube, so you'll have access to it. I'll also send over the slides as well. Any questions, just contact myself or Alan, or we have the Kickstarter official inbox as well. So any questions you have in there, if they're for a specific person, me or Alan, I can send them over. So obviously this is the last session, so I hope you really enjoyed them. And if you're looking to go into our business idea competition, then I'm excited to see your ideas coming forward. So yeah, as Alan said as well, we'll be having, we'll be scheduling that kind of session for the application process. So if you would like to come to that, I'll send over a link to you all once we organise it. So yeah, thank you again.
Okay, guys, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Cheers now.
Thank you.
If you need anything, give us a shout. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.